Good afternoon, YouTube. This is Chuck, and it's Friday, May 10th, 2024, and it's about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And in my last video, I talked about the mirrors, and where I'm parked right now, the setting sun was reflecting off of that convex mirror, and it was actually messing up my lighting here. So I grabbed my garage door opener and hooked it over the top of there as a temporary solution. Like they say, adapt and overcome. So anyway, that was the last video, and I got another little one for you today, and this one is going to be a Bigfoot related video. And now I've had a couple of people that have asked me about how my wife fits into all this, and I just had a viewer named Ralph that asked a question a little different. And his question is, can she communicate with them like I do, or is it just me? And I guess to answer that question, I've got to tell a little bit of a backstory to it. And when I first started getting interested in the subject, and it's been 13 years ago now, and I just quietly started doing some research and looking around and reading some stuff and watching some YouTube stuff and trying to figure out if these things were real. Number one, I didn't think they were. And also, if so, where could they be found, and what were they? Well, after doing this for a while, what I will tell you, let me back up a little bit. What I will tell you is that one of the things that prompted me to do it is, being a member of the Historical Society. Of course, there's a story here of the Mogollon Monster. And I've told that story several times, but basically, just real briefly, back in the mid-40s, there was a group of Boy Scouts that were camped down in a pretty remote canyon, and they had something come in right after dark and terrorized them. And then, the next morning, as soon as they had enough light to hike out, they hiked out, and then they were all afraid. Now, it didn't hurt anybody, but it scared them. And so anyway, when they told the locals what had happened, the word Bigfoot hadn't been invented yet, and nobody heard of the word Sasquatch, and so they ended up having to come up with a name for it. So they ended up calling it the Mogollon Monster. And what it probably was probably just a young one, just raising heck and feeling his oats, and decided to scare the humans. But like I said, it didn't hurt anybody, but they were all terrified about it. And, well, anyway, that story's part of our local lore here, and of course, being part of the Historical Society, of course, it all fit into what we do, and it's just part of what we talk about. Well, that kind of got me interested in maybe there was more stories to that. And so I decided I was going to go public and of not only what I was doing, but I was going to ask people about, if they had any stories. Well, I told my wife I was going to do this, and she was absolutely mortified. She said, "Oh, everybody's going to think you're crazy. The men in the white coats are going to come away and grab you and throw you in a rubber ambulance and haul you away to a rubber hospital somewhere, because everybody's going to think you're nuts." And so I said, I don't know. And number one, I don't really care at this stage of my life. Nobody's going to come up and tell me their story unless they know I want to hear it. And I've been on the edges of things in my whole life, and kind of been maybe a little bit ahead of the trends in some things. But anyway, so I went ahead and I went public, and she didn't like it one bit. Well, as I started going out, and as I started having experiences, I'd come home and I'd be all excited about something. I'd want to tell her about it, and she'd nod politely and say, "Yes, dear," but you could tell that, that she had absolutely zero interest in the subject. And so after I was a ways down the road, and after I discovered that they weren't some kind of discovered ape, they were people, and and I just started getting more into the subject and got more excited about it, and so finally, when I was out on one of my trips somewhere, and I don't even remember exactly which one or where exactly it was, but I do remember that we had them coming in, and we had them answering questions for us. And so I said, "Will you, I don't expect anything dramatic, and I'm not going to ask you to do anything dramatic, but is there a way that you can just let her know, just do something enough to let her know you're real?" and to let her know that I'm not making all this stuff up in my head. And I guess in short, boy, did they deliver. Since that time, she has had, number one, she's been zapped. She's had mind speak. She was summoned outdoors when we were up camped on top of the rim with our travel trailer. I got summoned outdoors, and while I was out there, pretty soon the door opens and she comes out and she said, "They want to see me. They want me out here." And she was almost in a trance when she said that. It was kind of weird. And because normally when we go camping up in an area where I think they might be, I like to go sit out by myself a little bit. And I just kind of cast out for the "Hi, we're here" tingle. And sometimes I get it and sometimes I don't. But anyway, this particular spot is a place we've gone several times. And I'd had activity there before, so I knew they were there. But anyway, they summoned her outside. And she came outside and stood outside a little bit. And we had an adult that lit up his or her eyes for us. And they had two juveniles that were in orb form that actually came in and showed themselves, and they were about 50 feet away, and they were about 4 feet off the ground, and they looked like little LED light bulbs, but they didn't blink on and off. They stayed on. So they're just little hovering white orbs. And so she got a good look at them, and they got a good look at her, and so then she said, I need to go back inside now. So she went back inside. Well, a few trips later, we were actually at a little different location, same general area, but this particular campsite was taken by somebody else, so we went to a different one. And once more, I was sitting outside, and I'd had a little bit of activity. I knew there was somebody there. And all of a sudden, the door opens, and she comes out, and she sits with me. Well, she almost never does that. Well, while she's sitting out there, all of a sudden, she looks, and she said, "Well, there's one stepped out from behind the tree right over there." And where I was sitting, there was another tree that was blocking the tree that she was talking about. So I said, "Well, I'm going to go walk over there." And so I did. She pointed out exactly which tree it was, and I started walking over toward it, and I got zapped really hard. It was like, okay, you're close enough. You don't need to come any closer. So I know that, that she saw what she said she saw. Well, the next morning I went over to that tree, and she sat in the same chair, and we did a recreation, and she said it was probably 2 feet taller than me, and it kind of stepped out from behind a tree and stood there for a few seconds and then stepped back behind the tree again. So it was obviously showing. It actually stepped out and showed himself to her, and it was about an 8-footer. So what's happened to her? Well, she's been zapped. She's had mind speak. They told her they wanted her to come outside so they could see her. She's had, she's seen the orb, she's seen the eye glow, and she's actually saw an individual step out from behind a tree. So what that did is that told her very conclusively that the things are real. That told her that her husband wasn't going bat poop crazy, and that there was really something to this. But she's still, I don't say she's in denial, but she doesn't share the enthusiasm for the subject that I do. And as a result, I think deep down inside, she'd rather I'd pick another hobby, because it does take me away from home a bit. She used to really, really object when I go out by myself, and because I'd go out to places and I'd just camp out there by myself and see what happened. And well, when I got started researching, for lack of a better term, with my Sasquatch partner Kevin, when he and I first met back in 2017, and then we got a couple other guys that started going out with us. Well, then pretty soon there's a group of us, and we almost don't go by ourselves anymore. We do a little bit, but not as much as we used to initially. And it's not because we're afraid. It's not because we think we're going to get killed or something. I mean, if they wanted to do us harm, they'd have done it a long time ago. But it's for confirmation. So if two of us see the same thing, then we know we're not making stuff up in our head. We're not imagining it. It's actually happening. And we've had that on a great number of occasions where something will happen and multiple ones of us will see it. And so it's for confirmation. It's not necessarily for safety. And but anyway, that's where she's at today. She's kind of accepted that I've gone down this rabbit hole, and as long as I go out with the guys, she doesn't seem to mind that awful too much. And she, it's in all reality, other than being gone for a while and the gas to drive back and forth, it's not a real expensive hobby. And if you watched my other videos, you know that I've had some absolutely incredible experiences, totally life-altering experiences. And another viewer asked me about what the changes that have happened in my life because of this, and it's really too lengthy, way too lengthy. I'm starting to figure out how to tell the story without having it a feature-length motion picture. But then somebody else said, "Can you talk about where you were 15 years ago versus where you are today?" And that's a little simpler. 15 years ago, I did not believe these things existed. I thought they were a, quote, mythical creature, end quote, like the news media would have you believe. Because every time there's a news article on it, it's always nudge, nudge, wink, wink, the mythical creature Bigfoot. Well, we know that they're not mythical. We know they're just as real as you and I. But she's kind of accepted that I'm into this now, and even though I guess she thinks maybe she kind of wishes I wasn't. I think at the beginning she figured it was a fad and that I'd get over it pretty quick and I'd be on to wanting to build a hot rod or something. And I still want to build a hot rod, but I think I'll be a squatcher for the rest of my days. So I think that probably answers the question on this story. And like I always tell you, take care of each other and love each other and take care of yourself. And there's a whole lot out there that we don't understand. And it seems like every time I learn something new about the Sasquatch people, all it does is open up 10 more questions. And maybe someday I'll know more about it, and maybe someday I won't. I don't know, but they give us little bits of information, a little bite at a time. And as I've often said, we consider every time we learn something a dot, and you connect the dots, the picture becomes clearer, and everybody gets a dot. So anyway, I think that's enough for right now. It's a beautiful afternoon. It's up in the 70s. I got to work the museum tomorrow, the afternoon shift, and I'm kind of looking forward to that. I kind of enjoy doing that. So I think for right now, I'm just going to turn the camera around so I can find the button. I haven't actually said that for a while, have I? So let me spin the camera around here. Give you a look at the late afternoon sun on my dashboard, and I'll tell you peace out.